We were given 30 days to pay $10,000 in fines or risk losing our home. And it was all because of a single sentence buried on page 87 of our HOA bylaws, a rule that felt like it was designed to push families like ours out. We thought we'd found our dream neighborhood. It turns out we'd walked straight into a nightmare. This isn't just a story about a dispute with a homeowners association. It's a story about how perfectly legal words on paper can be twisted and weaponized, creating a system of exclusion that's technically lawful but feels morally bankrupt. It's about how the American dream of owning a home can become a constant state of anxiety, all enforced by your own neighbors. For years, my wife, Sarah, and I had scraped and saved. Like a lot of people, our dream wasn't anything extravagant. We just wanted a safe place to raise our 2 kids, a yard for them to play in, and a real sense of community. I'm a self-employed master electrician. I work hard, my business is finally taking off, and we had just enough for a down payment on what we thought was our forever home. We found it in a place called Harmony Creek Estates. The name itself sounded like a promise. It was a gated community, and for us, that gate wasn't about being snobby, it was about security. The website and the brochures painted this perfect picture: flawless lawns, a sparkling community pool, a playground full of happy kids, and rows of beautiful, pristine homes. It felt like we had finally made it. During the walkthrough, our realtor couldn't stop talking about the HOA, presenting it as a huge selling point. "The HOA here is fantastic," she said. "They really protect your property values. They make sure the community always looks its best." To us, that sounded great. We're not the type to let our lawn get overgrown or leave trash cans out for days. We saw the HOA not as a set of restrictions, but as insurance on our biggest investment. Closing day was one of the happiest of our lives. We were handed a mountain of documents, including the covenants, conditions, and restrictions, the CC&Rs, the HOA's governing Bible. It was over 200 pages of dense legalese. Overwhelmed by the excitement and the sheer volume of paper, we initialed and signed where we were told. We trusted the professionals around us to flag anything unusual, assuming it was all standard stuff: rules about lawn height, paint colors, holiday decorations. We had no idea that buried deep in that stack of paper was a clause that would threaten to tear our new life apart. The first few months were everything we'd hoped for. The kids made friends at the playground, we met our neighbors, and we spent our weekends settling in. We felt this profound sense of peace. We'd done it. We'd built a foundation for our family in a place that felt like a sanctuary. But a sanctuary is only safe until you realize the walls weren't just built to keep threats out, but to trap you inside with one you never saw coming. Our grace period was about to end. The thing that started it all was so small it was almost funny. I'd had a long day on a job site across town and got home late, exhausted. Our garage was still a war zone of moving boxes and furniture waiting to be assembled. So for one night, I parked my work van in our driveway. This wasn't some rusty clunker. It was a new, clean, professionally lettered Ford Transit, a symbol of the hard work that got us this house in the first place. I didn't think twice about it. 2 days later, the letter arrived, crisp, white, and formal, with the Harmony Creek Estates logo at the top. It felt strangely impersonal and menacing. The letter informed us we were in violation of bylaw section 9.14, vehicle restrictions. The fine was $100. I actually laughed. $100 for parking in my own driveway? I said to Sarah. You've got to be kidding me. We figured it was just some overzealous board member on a power trip. We'd call the management company, explain we were still moving in, and that would be the end of it. We were reasonable people. Surely they were too. That phone call was our first clue that we had completely misunderstood Harmony Creek. The woman from the management company was polite, but her tone was scripted and inflexible. "I understand, Mr. Henderson," she said, her voice totally lacking empathy, "but the bylaws are very clear. No commercial vehicles may be parked in driveways overnight." I tried to reason with her, but it's my personal vehicle for my business. It's not a giant semi-truck. Our garage is still full of boxes. Her reply was chilling. The reason for the violation isn't a factor. The bylaws are the bylaws. You can appeal to the board in writing. That night, we finally sat down to read the infamous CC&Rs. We poured 2 large glasses of wine and started digging. We scrolled past pages on satellite dishes and fence heights, getting more and more frustrated. And then, on page 87, we found it, section 9.14. It started predictably, banning RVs, boats, and trailers. But then came the subsection that got us. It said, no commercial vehicles of any kind shall be permitted to be parked overnight on any portion of the property visible from the street. Bad enough, but the next sentence is what made the blood drain from our faces. It read, for the purposes of this covenant, a commercial vehicle shall be defined not only as any vehicle with visible lettering, but also any vehicle which, in the sole and absolute discretion of the Architectural Control Committee, is not in keeping with the residential character and aesthetic standards of the community. In the sole and absolute discretion. The phrase just hung there in the air. It was a blank check, a tool to judge. My van was an easy target, but what else could fall under that? An older car? A truck someone uses for weekend projects? Anything the committee just didn't like the look of. As we kept reading, it got worse. We found another clause, section 7.03, landscaping standards. It didn't just require a tidy lawn. It mandated that all front landscaping use pre-approved plants from the Harmony Creek Estates Flora Guide and include at least 1 specimen-grade ornamental tree. A quick Google search told us a tree like that could cost thousands. Our builder-grade landscaping, the perfectly nice shrubs and young maple in our yard, was technically in violation. We hadn't been cited for it yet, but the rule was a ticking bomb. Suddenly, it all clicked. These weren't just rules about tidiness. They were financial hurdles disguised as aesthetic guidelines. A rule against work vans disproportionately affects tradespeople. A rule requiring thousands in specific landscaping is a barrier for families who stretch to buy the house in the first place. These rules felt engineered to curate a very specific type of resident, salaried, driving a sedan, with cash to burn on landscape architects. The system felt designed to push us out. And the most terrifying part? It was all technically legal. We had agreed to it. Our dream home was starting to feel like a trap. Our hope for a simple conversation was obliterated at the first HOA meeting. The 5 board members sat like a tribunal at an imposing oak table. The president, a retired exec named Mr. Abernathy, wore a crisp shirt and a perpetually condescending smile. I calmly explained our situation. The van was essential for my work. It was clean and new. The garage was temporary storage. I said we were proud homeowners who wanted to contribute positively. Mr. Abernathy listened with a placid, unreadable expression. When I finished, he just tapped the thick binder of bylaws in front of him. Mr. Henderson, he began, his voice smooth and patronizing, the board's duty is not to the individual homeowner, but to the community as a whole. And our guiding document is this. He patted the binder. The rules exist to protect the aesthetic integrity and property values. If we make an exception for you, we have to make one for everyone. I'm afraid the violation stands. It was like talking to a well-dressed brick wall. We left feeling completely powerless. They weren't interested in fairness, only absolute enforcement. And so it began. The first $100 fine was joined by another a week later when I had to bring materials home for a job. Fines were $100 per day. Then came the late fees, compounding with sickening speed. Soon another letter arrived. Our lawn. Apparently, our grass had a few patches of clover, which wasn't on the approved ground cover list. We were also reminded of the specimen-grade tree requirement and given 60 days to submit a comprehensive landscape redesign plan. A landscaper quoted us nearly $8,000 to comply. Checking the mail became an act of dread. We got fined for our kids' basketball hoop being visible from the street. We got a violation because our trash can was put out at 5 p.m. instead of after 7 p.m. In 3 months, we'd racked up over $4,000 in fines. But the financial pressure was only part of it. The psychological toll was relentless. Friendly waves from neighbors turned into cold stares. Sarah took the kids to the pool and overheard 2 other moms whispering, "I just don't understand why some people move in if they can't abide by the simple rules." She came home in tears. Our home felt like enemy territory. That's when we decided to do more than just plead. I spent my nights researching HOA law, learning terms like fiduciary duty and selective enforcement. Sarah started cautiously talking to other neighbors. She found a few who were also being targeted for trivial things, all of them scared into paying. Then, a break. Sarah started talking to a man who was moving out. When she mentioned our HOA troubles, his face darkened. He told us the board president, Mr. Abernathy, often had a project car on a trailer in his own driveway. And the head of the architectural committee, she drove a large commercially branded SUV for her consulting side gig, frequently parked right on the street. He had photos. This was it, hypocrisy. It wasn't about the rules, it was about who they were applied to. This is a classic legal vulnerability for an HOA called selective enforcement. An HOA has a fiduciary duty to enforce its rules fairly and consistently for everyone. When they pick and choose, they're not just being unethical, they may be violating that duty. We also learned about something called disparate impact under the Fair Housing Act. It means that even if a rule seems neutral, it can be illegal if it disproportionately harms a protected class, like families with children. While economic status itself isn't a protected class, we started to see a pattern. The combination of rules felt designed to exclude. Armed with evidence and a flicker of hope, we were no longer just scared. We were angry, and we were ready to fight back. The breaking point arrived as a certified letter, a formal notice from the HOA's law firm. Our outstanding fines had ballooned to just over $10,000. If we didn't pay in full within 30 days, the association would place a lien on our property and could begin foreclosure proceedings. Foreclosure. The word was a punch to the gut. The idea that we could lose our home over a parked van and some clover was surreal. We had 2 choices: give in and live under their thumb forever, or take the biggest gamble of our lives. There was no real choice. We couldn't live in fear. We had to fight. The next day, we used our emergency savings to hire a lawyer who specialized in HOA disputes. Her name was Ms. Davies. When we laid out the story and showed her the bylaws, the letters, and the photos of the board members' own violations, a determined look crossed her face. "This is classic," she said, tapping the photo of Abernathy's trailer. "This is selective enforcement. It's arbitrary. They've likely waived their right to enforce this rule against you by ignoring it for themselves." Then she pointed to the sole and absolute discretion clause. "And this," she said, "while common, is ripe for abuse. Combined with your evidence, we have a very strong case." Ms. Davies explained our options. We could sue, but that would be long and expensive. Or we could try a more direct approach. She proposed a detailed cease and desist letter, putting the board on notice that we were prepared to file a lawsuit for breach of fiduciary duty. She also suggested filing a formal complaint with the Department of Housing and Urban Administration, HUD, arguing that rules which reasonably restrict normal family activities, like children's play equipment, could violate the Fair Housing Act's protections for familial status. We agreed. We worked with Ms. Davies to document everything, a timeline of notices, affidavits from the former neighbor, and even statements from 2 other families who felt targeted. The final package was a legal pressure campaign. The letter was sent to every board member, their management company, and their lawyer. It laid out the pattern of selective enforcement with photographic proof. It accused them of breaching their fiduciary duty by acting in a biased manner, and it ended with a clear ultimatum: Rescind all outstanding fines within 15 business days, or we would file the attached lawsuit and seek legal fees. The letter also noted a complaint was being filed with HUD, bringing the threat of a federal investigation. The next 10 days were the most stressful of our lives. We didn't know if they'd call our bluff or double down. Then, an email. It was from the HOA's attorney. It was short and to the point. After a thorough review, the board had voted to waive all outstanding fines. It also stated they'd be reviewing their enforcement policies to ensure fair and consistent application. No apology, no admission of guilt, but it was a total surrender. Sarah started to cry, not from sadness, but overwhelming relief. I wrapped my arms around her, the weight of the last 6 months finally lifting. We had won. We stood up to the bullies, and they backed down. The atmosphere in the neighborhood slowly changed. Mr. Abernathy stepped down from the board a few months later, citing personal reasons. The petty violation notices seemed to dry up. We hadn't just saved our home, we had accidentally made life better for everyone by dragging a dark secret into the light. Our story had a happy ending, but it came at a huge cost, financially and emotionally. And it shines a light on a much bigger issue. Millions of Americans now live in communities governed by HOAs. In theory, they preserve community standards. In practice, without oversight, they can become petty tyrannies. The clauses in our bylaws aren't unique. While overt discrimination is illegal, facially neutral rules about work vehicles, expensive landscaping, or subjective aesthetic standards can have an exclusionary effect. They can create barriers for working-class families or anyone who doesn't fit a narrow mold. It's hard not to see a parallel to the exclusionary housing practices of the past. What happened to us is a cautionary tale. It shows how easily the dream of home ownership can be twisted into a nightmare. It highlights how critical it is to read every single word of your HOA documents before you sign. Question vague language like sole and absolute discretion. Look for rules that seem designed to impose a serious financial burden. If you're in a similar spot, remember, you are not powerless. Document everything. Take pictures. Talk to your neighbors. You're probably not alone. And know that the law offers protections. Concepts like selective enforcement and breach of fiduciary duty can be powerful tools. Sometimes just the threat of legal action, backed by solid evidence, is enough. We fought back and we won back our peace of mind, but the broader fight against these unjust systems is far from over. And that brings me to you. Have you had your own nightmare experience with an HOA? A story of unbelievable fines, selective enforcement, or nonsensical rules? Share your story in the comments. By bringing these issues to light, we can build a community of support and show that no one is alone in this fight. If this story was helpful, please consider liking and subscribing for more deep dives into how ordinary people can stand up to powerful systems. Thanks for watching.